In this video, let's talk about operators. That's right, you can perform operations on different values. In fact, we have done that before, but let's expand the examples and more operators. So basically, we can add two numbers, we can subtract two numbers, we can divide two numbers, we can multiply two numbers, and also we can perform an operation so that you will get a remainder of an operation. Okay, so when you divide a number and if you only want a remainder, we can do that as well. So let me show you those things with a code here. So what I will do now is, first of all, let's create two variables, and of course we can name any variable name. Let's go with integer num1, and the value it will have, let's say 7, and then let's have one more variable here which is, let's say 5, num2 is 5, and then I can perform some operation and I can save that operation in a result. So let's say if you want to add two numbers, we can do that. We can save the output in result. And then to perform the operation, we can use a plus operator. That's right. We can actually use a plus operator to add two numbers. And then once you have done that, we can simply come back here. We can say system.out.println. And here we can print the result, and just to see if it is working. And as we discussed before, this is not a good way of running a code. You have to first compile the code, then run. But we got a shortcut. I can simply use Java space file name with .java, say enter, and we got 12. So when you say 7 plus 5, we got 12. Cool. Now what I will do is, so we can add two numbers. What about subtraction? Let's try that. So I will say minus symbol and run. You can see we got 2. So it is working. So you can add two numbers, we can subtract two numbers. How about multiplication? We can do that. So we can say star num1 into num2. Come back here, run, you can see we got 35. So 7 into 5 is 35. That is working. How about division? Let's try that. So the moment I say division, we have to use a slash. Okay, so we don't have a division. In fact, that's how we do it, right? We say underscore or something with a slash. So yeah, we got slash, let's try, and you can see we got 1. That's right. 1 is a quotient here, right? So when you divide 7 by 5, you get two things. 1 is a quotient, which is 1. And then you will also get a remainder. Now in this case, when you use slash, you will only get a quotient, not a remainder. So how will you get a remainder? In that case, you have to use a modulus operator. So we can use, when you say percentage symbol like this, it is a modulus operator. What it will give you is only a remainder. Okay. So if I run this code, you can see we got 2. 2 is a remainder here, right? Now we can use any complex numbers as well, whatever number you want to perform with. And I would suggest you to try certain examples so that you will get used to these operations. Now all this operation actually makes sense, right? These are very simple stuff to understand. Can we use some other operators as well? Let's try. What I will do now is, let me just remove this result for time being, or maybe I can just comment this part. I also don't need this num2. Let me only focus on the first variable, which is num1. Now let's say I want to add this num1 by 2. Okay, so basically the value of num1 is 7. I want to increment the value by 2. So what we can do is we can say num1 is equal to, so basically we have to use num1, which is num1 in this case, and we'll add a value to it, which is 2. And then whatever new value you will generate after this will be assigned to num1. Okay, that looks cool, right? Let's try this. I will say num1. Print num1, and let's run this code. You can see we got 9. So this is working. So 7 became 9. So this is working, right? Now, when you know that you are adding the number by itself, okay, what you can do is you can just use a shortcut. Now, what that shortcut says is, let me just comment this section here and let's write it fresh here. So we'll say num1. See, you want to increment the value of num1 by 2, right? You want to add itself by 2. So you can say, I want to add myself. But how much value? So I have to say equal to 2. So what we are saying is we want to increment num1 by 2. Even this should work. Let's try. Oh, we got an error because I forgot the semicolon. And let me just clear this, run. And you can see we got 9. So this is working. Cool. Now it's not just for addition. We can do that for any other operation. Maybe you want to subtract a number by 2. So we can say subtract equal to 2. So it will reduce the value by 2. You can see we got 5. We can multiply with some other number. Maybe I want to multiply the same number with another number and assign it. So we got 56, 7 into 8 to 56. We can divide as well. And so you can use slash and all the operators which you have. Awesome. So this is shorthand. Now going back to the addition operator, and then let's say if you want to add it by 2, we can simply mention the value 2, right? We can also add it by 1. So in this case, if you say add it by 1, the value of num1 is 7, and then you are adding it by 1, you can see we got 8. Now, in fact, there's a shortcut for this as well. What you can do is, instead of using num plus equal to 1, you can also say num1 plus plus. Even this is possible. Let's remove the space in between. So even this is possible. You can say num1 plus plus, which is incrementing. So what we are doing here is something called increment. And if you run this code, you can see we got 8. So this operation, let me just make it 1. So all these operations are similar. Okay, so why I'm saying similar, why not same? We'll discuss that in some time, but this is similar. And maybe we have done that before as well when we talked about characters. You know, we remember C++, we've done that. So yeah, we are incrementing it as well. Now, not just incrementing, we can do decrement as well. So instead of saying num plus plus, we can also say num minus minus. So what we are doing now is decrement. So when you say plus plus, that is increment. Let me comment this part. And here I will say num minus minus. Now, why do you have to comment this part? I want to run this. So we can say num minus minus. Let's run this code. See if this works. And you can see we got 6. So that's how you can perform this addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and increment, decrement. In fact, we have also talked about modulus, which is for finding the remainder. Okay. Now that was about increment, decrement, right? We have talked about that. Now, instead of using plus plus, we can actually use something called, let me just write it in comment. So instead of saying num1 plus plus, we can also say plus plus num1. You know, just to simplify this example, instead of saying num1 everywhere, let's say num, so that maybe you will get confused by that one extra symbol there, which is 1. Just ignore all this operation. Just focus on this part, which is num and num. Also remove this, also remove this. Let's see if this is working. Okay, this is working. So basically we can also say, instead of saying num plus plus, we can also say plus plus num. Now, what's the difference between these two? Even this also works. Let me just try that and show you. You can see we got 8. We are incrementing the value. Even this will give you 8. But what's the difference? What's the difference between writing this afterwards and writing before the variable? So basically, we have a different names to it. So whenever you perform operation after the variable, it is for increment or decrement. So when you do it post, we say it is post increment. And when you do pre, before the variable, it is called pre-increment. Okay, so when we are doing it afterwards, we say post increment. When we say before, it is doing pre increment. Now you might be thinking, hey, ultimately the value is same, right? So even if you even if you do this or this, both will increment the value. Then why we have two different syntax for it? Why not just simply one? The answer is it behaves differently when you try to assign a value, when you try to fetch the value. Let me repeat. These two operations will behave differently when you try to fetch the value. Okay, let me tell you what I'm talking about. Let me show you it here. Let's come back here. And let's say I have a different variable, which is int. And then I'm storing that in result. And what I'm storing is num, or maybe I will say plus plus num. Okay. Now think about this, and maybe you can pause the video or whatever you want to do. Just think about what will be the value of result. Okay, I will say result here to print. And maybe you have done your thinking. Let's run this. And you can see we got 8. So what is happening here is the initial value of num is 7, and then you are saying plus plus num. That means you are incrementing it. That incremented value will be assigned to result. Okay, and then you got result, which is 8. Okay, so initially I've also mentioned that this 2 will be incrementing, so we can also say num plus plus. Even this should be doing the same thing, right? Let's try. Oh, there's a twist here. So plus plus num and num plus plus are not same. I mean, it works same if they're individual statement, but when you try to fetch the value from them when they are performing the operation, they behave differently. So let's understand why it is called pre-increment and why it is called post-increment. So whenever we use assignment operator with this operation, what it will do is, it will check, hey, we have an operation which is num plus plus, but that's a post increment. So first it will fetch the value of num. Let me repeat. It will first fetch the value and then increment. In fact, it looks like one statement, but we have two statements here, right? In fact, we have this statement here, num1 equal to num plus 1. So what it will do is, it will first fetch the value of num, which is 7 in this case, and then it will increment the value of num and will make it 8. Okay, but then what is assigned to result is 7 itself, and then you are printing that 7 here. Okay, but what will happen when you say, let me just write it here. So we'll say int result is equal to plus plus num. In this case, what will happen is it will first increment and then fetch the value. Okay, so it will first increment itself and then it will fetch the value. And that is what is going into result. I hope this makes sense, right? So this is how your code works when you say plus plus num and num plus plus. In fact, we'll do some more operations with this once we get started, and it will make much more sense later. So in the operators, we have talked about arithmetic operators till this point. So whatever operation we have done, it is for the arithmetic purpose, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. But what if you want to compare two values? What if you want to have compound conditions? Okay, what are those things? We'll talk about that in the upcoming videos.